Welcome back, man. We got some interesting developments going on, especially now in the continent, particularly with Uganda, right? Uganda's having some issues. We got some issues in Nigeria. We got some issues in Burkina Faso, right? We got issues everywhere just brewing. Um, but I wanted to jump right in to what's going on in Uganda because honestly, Uganda's going crazy right now. Um, Let me get this presentation right. All right, share screen. Boom, boom. So here it says the Ugandan opposition bodyguard charged after torture, lawyer says, right? So a bodyguard of one of Uganda's opposition leaders, Bobby Wine, has been charged with aggravated robbery days after the head of the military said he had detained him. Last week, General Muhozi uh, Kainerugaba, I'm terrible, Kainerugaba, Kainerugaba, right? Who is also President Yoweri Museveni's son, confirmed that he had been holding Eddie Mutwe 5 days after his disappearance. The lawyer representing the bodyguard, whose real name is Edward Sebufu, said his client had been tortured, telling the country's Daily Monitor newspaper, and he had been beaten using wires of electricity. Right. Magellan added that Mr. Sabufu was in great pain and had also faced the squeezing of his private parts. Ouch. Right. So, what's going on is apparently he's the bodyguard of the opposition leader of the guy that's running against Museveni, right? And apparently Museveni's son is the one who had him, right? But this is actually a real interesting element of African politics because we're seeing different kinds of brands of dictator, right? We see political dictators, we see now military dictators, right? And we get to actually see the difference between the two. I have a theory, Professor Pops, my father, he has a theory. And there's many different theories about it, whether or not politicians, businessmen, or soldiers are going to free Africa. But we're going to dive in on this particular topic as well. And another topic that is pressing is the fact that someone like man like Traore is Traore is in Russia right now. Is Russia going to be just another colonial power, right? Or is Russia using Burkina Faso for um, a nuclear point that could potentially affect the United States, right? Potentially affect the West. We don't know, right? This is the question that a lot of people have that is kind of the wait and see tree that is Burkina Faso. But let's go ahead and plug up and get ready to call the professor real quick. Because I think this is going to be a really interesting topic and something interesting to get into as we continue to see what's going on the continent. Another thing is Nigeria, man. Now, where does Nigeria stand on this? Right? How do we have a discussion as a larger whole about where the other African countries stand on this? We see certain countries, like I think is it Ivory Coast? It could be Ivory Coast, but I'm wrong. That are with people like General Langley. And also let's not act like General Langley is that black people in America sent General Langley. They didn't. Shout out Sergeant Willie Pete, right? But let's have this discussion with the professor and see what he thinks. Hey, what's good, Professor? How you doing, man?
Fine, fine, thanks.
You sound a little far. Can you come a little closer?
And now?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. Man, I was just giving them some background context, reading a couple of articles about what's going on in Uganda right now with Museveni and his son and the opposition leaders. What are your thoughts on that, man?
I mean, these days, every business is just family business. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah,
So the business of ruling Uganda seems to be controlling Uganda, controlling the military, and through it controlling the politics of Uganda seems to be the Kaguta Museveni family business.
I see. Okay. Um, what does the commoner not know about the context of what's going on in Uganda right now? Can you provide not only some context but kind of paint some analogous pictures that could help us understand the sphere of what's going on in Uganda?
Well, the most important thing you need to know is that Museveni has been ruling Uganda since 1986.
Right.
Many of your listeners were not born by that time.
Right.
And the background of it is the fractious nature of Ugandan politics. It is more ethnicized, probably more than anywhere else in the continent. And the biggest problem is
And
that there is a
by that
big
you mean that there's more ethnic groups.
no.
Or what do you mean by ethnicized? Explain to the viewers what that means.
That is what I was about to. There is one big ethnic group called the Buganda or
Hmm.
the Baganda, depending on how you want your phonetics to sound.
Hmm.
And the Buganda were among the most centralized kingdoms in Africa.
Wow.
And they were ruled by kings called Kabakas.
Hmm.
And they did not believe anybody who is not a Muganda and anybody who did not descend from the royal clan or the royal family could ever govern Buganda and by extension Uganda,
Right.
or govern Uganda and by extension Uganda. And therefore, any elections held were bound to produce a leader from either the Buganda kingdom or somebody supported by the Buganda.
Wow. Okay.
And because of that, there has been a lot of dissension against the Buganda. Funny enough, at independence, the ruler Obote wasn't from the Buganda, but he was supported by them.
Hmm.
But then, if you are not, if you are
And Obote is the
supported
one
by
who
somebody
preceded
else,
Amin, correct?
he was the one who was overthrown by Amin.
Yeah, he preceded Amin.
Mhm.
Got you.
So Amin came over, and after Amin was overthrown in 1971, there followed was overthrown in 1979. There followed a period of political instability, leading to elections that were held around 1983-84. Museveni came number 7 or number 6,
Wow. Okay.
and then he protested against it and went to the bush. 2 years down the line, he came as the triumphant liberator of Uganda.
Wow.
And at the beginning, he was a very, very loved man.
Hmm.
He established institutions, he was able to bring peace and stability, and he became a darling of the world, more like your angel in Burkina Faso.
You think I think he's an angel? I don't think he's an angel. I think
Well,
he symbolizes something that a lot of political Africans have lost complete touch with, and that is directness, right? Directness and directly swiftly dealing with that. On that note, by the way, before you continue, Assimi Goita, I think from Mali, he recently just jailed so many officials in the Sahel in his region for corruption. But we'll get to that in a second. Continue what you were saying about Museveni.
so if you want to draw parallels, when I was your age or roughly there, Museveni was our Traore.
Really? Wow.
All the hopes we had of good governance were pegged on Museveni.
Got you.
So we've been there. We've been there before.
Okay. Okay. So
So your Traore runs two risks of going the Thomas Sankara way of going out too quickly,
mhm.
or probably might turn out to be another Museveni who started very well and then headed where now you found him, where you can't associate him with good governance, or you might end up somewhere in between.
And that's one of the questions that I was going to ask you, right? As we flush out this idea of finding the residing or the best political systems that exist within Africa, right? As we dive into these ideas, you said democracy doesn't work because a 4-year span, or one of the reasons why was because a 4-year span um, is far too short to institute changes that took many years to come in, and that's understandable, right? But if that's the case, yet someone like Museveni in your mind is has become has gone from a Traore like figure to almost destroying his own image and influence, right? Then what is the right time frame for someone in power, right? Especially from your, let's just keep it to your opinion, right? In your opinion, then, if democracy's rule of 4 years to 5 years is too short, in addition to a second term, so maybe 10, right? If that is too short, what is too long? And Museveni's is too long. What is just right?
The right thing is that he should remain a military man.
So
As long as you are a military man and a good dictator, you can implement what you want.
so his problem is not the duration. His problem was the change from a military leader to a political one.
And you know what they say about politicians. They are like diapers. You need to change them every so often, otherwise they start stinking.
Okay. Okay. So
So if he can remain a military leader,
mhm,
accountable to everybody,
mhm,
and he has to prove himself every day, that is very different from when you wear a civilian cloth.
mhm.
You manipulate the hoi polloi, they start singing your songs, you start getting interested more in your ability to manipulate and rig elections as a sign of your popularity. You see, the the system here changes, the ends change. When you are a military guy and you've taken over power, you want to show that the previous political leaders have been mismanaging and misgoverning and misruling.
And you
So
can
you
only
are
do that
bent
through
on
results.
exactly,
Okay.
you are judged by the results. Then the equation changes when you become a politician. And now, rather than results, the outcome becomes popularity, which you can manipulate by simply having the most money, manipulating institutions, or just getting the microphone, the loudest.
Right. But a
So
military, you're
the
so
problem,
let me recap
uh,
because I want to
mhm,
make sure that as you build, we're following and the viewers are also following. So you're saying essentially, right, that a a military leader who takes power, such as Traore, must remain so in order to be effective in his delivery of uh, results to the people. And secondly,
mhm.
diverting from that and becoming a politician, then puts him back in that sphere of, even if he's not manipulating things, it's still possible to do so through the institutions, right? But
He
staying
has
in that
to.
results based level keeps him accountable to the people, is what you're saying?
Yes,
Okay.
keeps himself accountable to the people,
Okay.
and the people's support are the result of tangible benefits.
Right.
And the second thing is,
Hmm.
when you're a military man, you don't owe your loyalty to anybody. You don't owe your position to anybody. So nobody will come there and start demanding for goods that they do not deserve because they put you there. And as a result of this, you are in a position to distribute the national resources in a manner that can resemble equality.
Right. Kind of like
You can put resources where they are likely to produce more rather than rewarding people who are supporting you.
how the technocrats and in in America, as well as certain really powerful aristocrats fund campaigns, and then those campaign the politicians that the actual ones running end up influencing policy that helps their companies, right? Is that what you
Take
mean?
Elon Musk, for example.
Okay.
His 250 million
Hmm.
was paid the first 100 days of Trump governance.
Right, right, right,
He
right.
was given the mantle to do whatever he wanted to do to recoup his money.
Hmm.
And this one was so deep that he even ended up influencing not just the policy, but the ones who are going to make the policy and the ones who are going to implement that policy.
And thus, with just by having the money, he ends up having all of the power without any of the responsibility.
You see that didn't have as much negative effect on America as it would have on a small economy like Uganda's, like Kenya's, like
Right,
Ivory Coast,
right.
because it is a very strong economy. It will take way more than that to shake it up. But you see, in Africa, where it is not just ethnic,
Hmm.
it is also regional. And regions have also different advantages. They have different comparative advantage, where sometimes the people who are most productive or the people who have the resources for production happen to be in the opposition zone. So by just sabotaging what they produce, technically you are sabotaging your own progress and your own successes.
Wow.
When you are a military man, you can't do that because you want to produce the most, the best, the cheapest, and distribute them to the largest population because that is the only way to keep yourself in power. But when you become a politician, you want to either direct the productive tools to your friends, your supporters,
Mm.
who might not be the most efficient producers, or you can do that by sabotaging the production capacity of your enemies, majority of whom might be in the most productive regions.
Wow. That's a complex thing to that's a simple decision with very complex implications. Uh I see what you mean.
Let me simplify it.
No, it's already I completely see what you mean already, but definitely
Okay.
go ahead. Go ahead and simplify it again because I again driving things home is just fine.
No, I was just about to tell you an example of your motherland, Kenya.
Hmm.
You guys produced in Nyanza,
Hmm.
the seat of opposition.
Yeah.
We still import more sugar, even when sugar millers and farmers are running at 25% capacity.
Just because you
So you
don't
find
want
there is a
to.
sugar shortage,
Yeah.
yet we can produce more than we can consume
And
simply because
that's because they don't want to
the
fund the opposition.
exactly they
Right.
don't want to give any benefits to the opposition. Compare that with tea and coffee in central Kenya.
Hmm.
Every time there's drought or famine, even when it doesn't affect coffee farmers get boost from the state to the tune of billions. Coffee farmers are encouraged to take loans from government institutions and government parastatals, and after 2 3 years, all those loans are forgiven. All that is production resources that are directed to a certain community because of its relationship to the government. while the others are denied the same because of this, because of their relationship to the government.
Man, I'm starting to see why uh certain socialist countries or socialist leaning countries, right, um, decided to do away with anything other than nationalism, because nationalism was a great way to simplify interests for the country, uh, without having to deal with all of the even ethnic issues or religious issues that may cause conflicts of interest when it comes to gaining national pull. So now I'm starting to see why nationalism can actually be very helpful in situations. Do you think that the
Just
Burkinabe
before
people?
you ask me a question,
Go ahead.
which profession is associated with being very nationalistic?
Military man.
Exactly. You see where I was going.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. Okay, listen, that's a
Mhm.
brilliant. So this is a brilliant. I think I might make this title. Why do military leaders work better than political leaders in Africa? Right? Ask the professor, because this is starting to be the a beautiful thesis of, we're real time seeing the difference between military leaders distribution of national resources and political leaders distribution of national resources. By nature, I'm starting to see that the overarching component is that an elected official, that was the word I was looking for earlier, otherwise, by the way, an elected official has to, in some capacity, pay back their funders, right? In a
Mhm.
political system, whereas a military leader has to think of their nation, right? Because they're not thinking of it from a perspective of, how do I garner these resources from power? They're looking at it as, I still have to defend a nation and maintain a nation. So a soldier is actually way more nation minded in their training than a politician is. A politician is more self interested. Do you think that these forms of train are you essentially saying then that a politician could grow to become useless in a military based or a military led system?
Exactly.
Wow. That is not where I thought you were going with it. But as I thought about it, I was like, are you saying that, so you're saying that this could be the death of the politician in Africa?
If if the military guy didn't value being a politician more than he values being in the military, if he retains his military professionalism and still retains his uniform,
Mm,
as long as he doesn't change it,
mm.
we'll have a solution. You remember, you at one point you asked me what is the solution for Africa.
Right.
Where we are, the only thing is a Traore who doesn't become a politician.
Mm, mm. So you must be a soldier.
And as long as now he does that by expanding the soldiers class,
The Sahel states.
and now makes not just recruitment the most important thing, but training them in other areas of trades, such that even when the guy from the military gets out of the military, and make it easy for them to to leave whatever time they want, because once they get the skills, they go to a village and start using these skills to produce.
And not
And
produce for
because
export, they produce for their own country, for their own consumption.
whichever one there is, let's not even get to that. Let's just start by producing. As long as we can produce, as
Mm.
long as we can produce more, as long as we can produce cheaply, as long as we can produce effectively and efficiently, we'll be able to export them. But the first thing must be the production. And I was telling you, as long as these guys will still retain, even when they get out of the military, as long as they will still retain their links more with the military than trying to establish themselves as now local politicians, they will still be driven by the same ethos of production, of being more productive rather than being more popular.
Right.
As
Production over
long as that
popularity.
ethos continues, The moment we'll have more people thinking in terms of production rather than popular, we are going to change. Short of that, again, I don't see a solution where we are.